Hello lovelies, today I'm here to be doing a dedicated review to Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. This is the Fairy Loot exclusive edition, and let's just jump into the blurb, shall we? In every story there is a hero and a monster. It should have been the perfect summer. Sent to stay with her late mother's eccentric family in London, 16-year-old Joan is determined to enjoy herself. She loves her nerdy job at the historic Holland house, and when her super cute co-worker Nick asks her on a date, it feels like everything is falling into place. Then a Good Samaritan attempt gone wrong sends Joan spinning through time, and her life quickly begins to unravel. Her family aren't just eccentric, they're monsters with terrifying hidden powers. And Nick isn't just a cute boy, he's a legendary monster slayer who would do anything to bring them down. As she battles Nick, Joan is forced to work with the beautiful and ruthless Aaron Oliver, heir to a monster family that hates her own. She will have to embrace her own monstrousness if she is to save herself and her family, because in this story, she is not the hero. I have conflicting thoughts on this book. I'm just going to start off my overall rating. Unfortunately, I did give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I was battling between a 3, between a 2, and I thought, okay, 2.5 feels a bit more true to how I was feeling throughout the majority of this. And yeah, it's just a really strange one for me to review, because to start with, I went into it pretty much with no expectations. When I unboxed it, I think I had a little bit of excitement when I heard like monsters and stuff, but after that there wasn't really much peak. I didn't see many reviews or anything like that. I didn't really necessarily go up searching for any reviews and thoughts, so I didn't have any hype either way. I wasn't not looking forward to it, and I wasn't looking forward to it. I just didn't have any expectations. But yeah, honestly, I was just ready to go with the flow, so I can't say that I'm necessarily disappointed in what I got out of this, but it definitely left a lot to be desired. So the reason I say this is a tricky one for me to review and to kind of wrap my thoughts around on a whole is because I found it equally fast-paced in a way that I could enjoy and fly through, and I ended up enjoying whenever I put it down, I looked forward to picking it back up. So there's that. But then on the other side, it felt really juvenile. Like I've read a couple of reviews since writing my own and kind of wrapping my thoughts around things as much as I can, and quite a few people that also didn't enjoy it said it felt more on the middle grade spectrum, and I definitely can vibe with that. It didn't really feel like the YA that I preferred. It felt much more younger in tone, and in saying that, I am in my mid to late 20s. It's not my demographic, I know that. I'm not the target audience, but I still generally enjoy YA. But I just found that the tropes that were included, I just felt like I was aging up, or it just wasn't done in the way that I tend to enjoy. It just felt super young, and the tropes that I didn't enjoy generally, which insta-love I've always loathed, just got on my nerves even more. I'm also a little low-key salty about the fact that there was no actual mermaids and monsters to how you would imagine them to be. So throughout this you get a lot of, is it iconography of mermaids? So I have a bookmark that came with one of the Fairy Loot unboxings. It might have been with this particular box, and on there is like an etching of a mermaid. There's a couple of mermaid designs thrown in here, and there's me thinking, oh, mermaids, okay, cool. But it's more of like a sigil, it's more of like a family sigil, I guess you'd call it. So it wasn't what I was expecting. And on the topic of monsters, it threw me off because it wasn't the chimera based monsters. Like, they don't shapeshift into anything. There's no actual like hybrid beasts or anything like that. They are very human like. They've just got magical powers in a way, and the powers aren't even that super magical. Like, they are, but they're not like invisibility, that sort of stuff. Like, one family has the power of remembering and memory, which is actually really cool, but it's not to the extent that I was expecting. I was expecting more of a fantasy based actual mythical beasts rather than humans that just call themselves, they're not humans, but these human looking characters that call themselves monsters, which ended up sounding more like a derogatory term, and I don't know why I don't know, it felt really weird and really confusing and not at all what I was expecting, even though I went into it with no expectations. It's just the monster part really baffled me, and it's something that threw me right off as soon as I wrapped my head around the fact that no actual monsters were to be found. I was like, oh, so this is what we're dealing with. Okay, so yeah, the whole terminology of the characters calling themselves, like referring to themselves as monsters, it just didn't feel right. Like, I'd get it. Sorry, I read this as a buddy read with Deborah from Hills of Books, and she mentioned this and I totally agree, but I'd get it if it was the hero character. So it's kind of like a villain hero story, but you're following the perspective of the villain. Who is she really the villain? The hero more seems like the villain aspect. It's that kind of vibe. If he was referring to them as monsters, then it would feel more like, okay, yeah, because it sounds derogative, right? But no, like, that's just their term, that's what they call each other, and it just didn't fit for the powers that they had. It was a bit of an over-exaggerated term, I would say. I mean, personally, I feel like it probably had more of like a deeper metaphor, probably like, oh, you can't judge what you see on the surface, you don't know what people are hiding, that sort of thing, and a bit more in depth there. But it could have been done in other ways, in a more logistical sense, without this. And there was also an over repetitive sense of phrases with the monsters and other phrases. I should have highlighted some that really irritated me, but yeah, there was too much repetition of phrases. Again, that fed into that kind of juvenile, oh, we must remember the audience because they're not going to remember on their own sort of thing, you know. I don't know, I don't really have any particular thoughts on the characters themselves. They all seemed pretty flat, pretty 2D for me. I didn't really have a connection or care about any of them, and whether they came out on top, came out okay. It just, it was not for me, unfortunately. The one thing I did enjoy was learning a little bit more about this time element, and how you can and can't disrupt elements of the timeline. But I always feel like time travel and time loops and anything like that is something that can be really tricky to get right. And I just don't think that this did it. At first it felt very straightforward, but then there was times where it just felt so sloppy because it wasn't focusing on that aspect, and then other times where it was like, oh no, we've got to rush to build this aspect of it up properly, and then it felt like overly complex and confusing. But really at the heart of it, I think it was mainly just like a star-crossed lovers story, and like trying to, almost like a redemption maybe, and trying to get your family back. And it just, not a book for me, unfortunately. I thought it could be, and I was just left with a lot lacking, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't think this is a series. So yeah, I don't think this is a book that is going to be awfully memorable for me in the long run, and it's definitely not a series that I'm going to continue with. I think it is going to be a trilogy, but I'm not really interested in picking up the other two books whenever they release. So unfortunately, this is not a very positive outcome from this one. It's really sad. I don't know, maybe if it was marketed more at middle grade, I would have enjoyed it more, but what it was marketed for and the whole monster situation, it just fell really flat for me. But there's that. You may feel completely differently. But there's my review for Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall speak to you in another video soon. Bye!